Hello and welcome to the Solve Network. I'm Shane Borza, host of the podcast. Along with my co-founder Benjamin Goss, we'd like to welcome you. Our mission is to provide solutions and create a network of experts for you to learn from. We hope this episode and expert helps you to learn, grow, and move forward. And now, on with the show.
Hey, my name is James. I'm a lawyer who's always been interested in optimal human performance, and that's how I found Shane. If you're looking to upgrade your mental and physical fitness, then the Ultimate Performance course is for you. It's the key to performing better at work, at home, and in all of life's challenges. I've also found it to be a great community of like-minded and supportive professionals. As Shane says, together, everyone accomplishes more.
Want to have your ultimate performance or find out more about how to optimize your mind and body fitness? Contact me at shaneborza.com and see if the DIY or the group program would be best for you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Solve Network. Tonight, we have a very special guest expert, Marianna Teudor, who will be talking to us about the importance of organizing both your home and workspace and how clutter can impact both your mood and feeling, but also your output. She is the CEO of Harmony, and I'm delighted to have her here on the call. So, Marianna, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself a little more and get us started with talking about how your company came to be and where you got the idea for it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, first of all, for the amazing introduction, Shane. I appreciate it. And well, prepare yourself because we're going to dive deep. But I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. So I'm going to go back 2 years from now. I was in a completely different state of mind, and I was at a corporate job, 9 to 5. And I would show up every day just feeling like there's something missing. And at one point, I had a breakthrough where I was just like, oh, life doesn't have to be miserable. And so I decided to just shift things around. And I went to Hawaii and I lived there for a few months. And on that self-discovery journey, I just realized, who I was and how I could help people and how I can serve. And that all translated into me eventually hiring Coach Amanda, which you know about, who made me do a value sheet. And we basically concluded that one of the top priorities that I naturally had in my life was organization. And I always thought people just did that. I had no idea that there's people who are extremely organized and people who aren't. I really just assumed everyone was. And so that is where the business idea started from. I launched a business back in December, and since it has morphed into what it is today, I recently partnered up with Tom Drews, who's the founder of Making Minutes. And at first, we started doing decluttering sessions individually, one-on-one, online. And now what we're doing since the transition is we offer corporate workshops implementing these values that we have. So emotional intelligence, organization, decluttering your space, and all sorts of other important factors to consider in workspace. So that's basically the background of how Harmony came about and what transition it went into.
Now, you talked about doing these workshops, but you began working with people one-on-one. So I'm curious what the difference is now as opposed to where you started. Are you finding that you're changing what you're doing with people, or is it the same thing and you're just doing it with more people than just one-on-one?
I think to me, having the opportunity to be able to speak with more people at once feels just more fulfilling. I don't know if it's just in my personality to just like to be, in front of a lot of people and be seen, but I just always wanted that for myself. And the picture of knowing I'll be able to stand up on stage and help as many people as I can and talk and just have this whole dynamic, I find to be more aligned with myself and my vision for myself and my future. Yeah.
Have you found that there's a certain industry or section that kind of seeks out your services more than another? And if so, what are they most looking for?
That's a very good question. To be honest with you, I think there isn't. I think that every single corporation who values, their employees' well-being and who values not sucking the juice out of their employees, but just having them feel good and be productive as a natural result, from being and working in a decluttered and organized workspace. I think anyone who values that will be, the right industry for what I offer.
What have you found is the biggest like aha moment for your clients?
When they realize that they spent a lot of time not doing something that's valuable to them or something that's going to bring them happiness. Like a lot of people scroll on social media for, even if it's just an hour or 2 hours a day, they don't realize they just get sucked into the social media matrix. And before they know it, they've wasted weeks and years of their lives just doing something that's not bringing them closer to happiness.
So you're going to get really granular with kind of steps that people could do, like maybe a takeaway when they get done with a call, they can go, oh, I didn't realize I could make these small changes. What are a couple examples of things that you might recommend for people to do, like even if it's in their home space?
Absolutely. I think the first thing people can do is set an alarm and get started. A lot of people, especially when they look around and they see how overwhelming their space looks like when they don't know where to begin, the first thing I tell people is set an alarm. Put it for 25 minutes. It's called the Pomodoro technique, and it's the fastest way to just break through procrastination and jump right into, decluttering. The second step that I would recommend once you have the alarm set is definitely to take a photo. I know it's probably not what you're expecting, but the reason why I say that is because sometimes we get started and what happens, excuse me, is that the space in transition will look very cluttered because you're taking things out of your cabinets to reorganize. However, when you take a photo before, when you replace everything and you see your space after, you can have that as a reference point. And there's so many times I started decluttering and then I regretted not taking a photo. So my second step is take a photo. I promise you won't regret it. Step number 3 is to actually get started. So pick one of the areas that has the highest amount of calamity. If you don't know what that means, it's very simple. So let's picture a whole house. Okay. And you have the kitchen, the bedroom, the bathroom, and you have an office in there. And in that office, there's a lot of bills that are due, and there's a lot of, paperwork and taxes. So if that space is not organized and you don't know when your bills are due and you don't know when you need to find your tax paperwork, you end up having calamities. These are consequences that come from not having an organized space. So you check basically, you create a list. Actually, let me rephrase that. Create a list of the highest level of calamity in your house, and then you start with that area. Then step 4 would be to tackle it down piece by piece. So let's pretend we're working with an office, which is usually what I specialize in. What you will do is start with the surface. And the reason why I say this is because if you start with the drawers and your surface is not empty, you're going to get easily overwhelmed. And most often than not, you'll find yourself with a more chaotic office and you're going to get overwhelmed. So the first thing, you take everything out, create a clear space for yourself. And even if you didn't start anything, you'll feel better knowing your top counter is clear and you can go step by step. After that, I feel like I'm just going like check, 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 check. Once that's done, you have the opportunity to go drawer by drawer. But before you get there, the stuff that you took out of your counter, you're going to start sorting through them. Now, the best way to do this is ask yourself, what value does this object hold? I'll give you an example, right? So right next to me, I have this little pencil holder, right? I keep a few in there. I don't need all of them, but I use most of them. Let's say I were to sort through this. The way I would go about this is very simple. I would go, okay, well, this marker I haven't used in months. I don't even, there's no ink in it. This marker either, that one too. I like it, but I just never picked that one. I don't need these. Okay. I'm gonna go with these, and that doesn't serve a purpose in here, so let me move it out. There you go. So do you see how you're left with a little bit? That's what you're gonna organize then. Now you can create an organizing system for it. You can sort it by color. You can sort it by active and inactive. So active would be an item that you would want closer to you, or inactive would be an item that you know you'll need, but you don't need near you. You can sort it by size. Now, most often than not, big items go together and small items go together. There's so many different categories, but to keep it very short and simple for you, the first step is to understand the value behind it, and then you'll be able to give it a home. And I feel like that's the basic. I'm not going to go too deep into it because then I'm just going to overwhelm you guys. But to keep it short and sweet, there are some rules to organization, and understanding it and learning it will help you to keep your space very efficient and functional.
I think even just in that, the idea of starting with the empty surface so you have some space to kind of work with. I can tell you, I flashed into my head organizing things before, and the 2 or 3 times I could pull up in my memory, I was like, oh, what did I do? I started at the bottom shelf, I opened it up, I took everything out and I put it on top of my desk. And then all of a sudden now I'm confused because I had the stuff that was on the desk already, which I didn't think to move first. And then I added more to it, and now everything's all mixed together. So it seems like such a simple thing when you say it, but there was a lot in there that I think people wouldn't necessarily think of. Or even just the example with the pens. I would say people are just listening to the audio later, they won't be able to see that, but it's quite often, like you said, like, oh, I haven't used this. There's no ink in this, like this doesn't work, what have you. I mean, it's funny, I found for me, because I used to have something like that, and it would just accumulate stuff because I had something there that I could put things in. So where am I going to do with this thing that I have? I'll put it in the whatever the holder is. Well, simply by getting rid of the holder, I now don't have something to put stuff in all the time, which means if I have something in my hand, I put it back where it belongs. And little things like that. So I'm curious, do you have any other like little tips like that might be kind of simple, but also kind of life-changing for people's, spaces and organization?
If we're going to go with life-changing tip, I would say organizing doesn't happen in the house. It happens when you're in the store and you're about to buy that thing that you know you will not use, but you're just buying it. The real process starts there, because once it's in your house, it's gone. Like, it's too late. You're probably going to store it because you feel bad and you feel guilty for throwing it out. And then there's a whole process of purging. So the first thing I would say is just be mindful when you're purchasing something. Make sure it serves a purpose. And if you know you won't use it, even sometimes give yourself a week. Like, when I'm about to buy something, now what I do is I ask myself, is this impulsive? Will I need it, or will I regret not buying it a week from now? If the answer is no, I don't make the purchase. And till this day, I still don't regret it. Another tip I can give you, if that's if that's like something you already are doing, is to be okay with the art of surrendering and purging. Sometimes a whole house accumulates things fast because we never take the time to purge. It's as simple as that. So if you feel too overwhelmed to declutter, often, just purge when you have time. Like, I'll give you an example. You're cooking a meal, your meal is on the stove, you have 10 minutes. You can open a cabinet and just quickly sort through the stuff. Do I need this? No. Okay, great. Good. Bye-bye. Done. And before you know it, you've purged your entire house. So there's little tweaks like that that you can start implementing in your life to just make purging and decluttering and organizing a part of your day in a simple way. I do have another one actually now that I'm thinking about it as well. And it is to buy, if you are buying a house, to be mindful of the furniture you own and to have them be functional as well as aesthetic. Now, a great example for that would be a coffee table can have drawers, and a sofa can have little storage units underneath. These are great ways to start creating storage spaces so that you don't have physical clutter around you and that it's actually hidden in the cabinets. So these are like easy ways to just, live in a decluttered space.
I want to go back to the technique you were talking about earlier, and I missed the name. What was it called?
The first technique, which is like purging, not purging
It's like the Pomo technique or something.
I know what you're talking about. Okay, the 25-minute Pomodoro technique. Yeah. Have you ever heard of this before?
No, I haven't. So I'm curious if you could describe that technique a little more.
Absolutely. It originated in Italy. And basically, the whole origin of that word, it symbolizes tomato because it was inspired by this tomato timer you have in the kitchen. So, and it works in increments of 25 minutes. And the whole strategy is very simple. Basically, you use sets of 25 minutes. One set of 25, it's one Pomodoro. And usually when you do a to-do list or when you work and you want to be efficient, what you do is you work by increments of 25 minutes and then 5-minute break. 25 minutes, 5-minute break. And you do that as long as you need to tackle down a project. Now, for instance, if you were to declutter, for instance, an office, it can easily take 6 hours, 7 hours in total, not like off the bat. So you can separate it per day and then go, let me start with this cabinet. I'll do 3 sets of Pomodoros. And then tomorrow I'll do another 3 sets. And this is just an easy way and an easy technique to just get started and not feel overwhelmed at the idea of like 2 hours in a row, 3 hours in a row.
That seems that it would also fit in very well, like especially with corporate, because you could have like a 25 minutes of organizing and decluttering, and then you have a 5-minute break, and that's a half an hour, and then you do that again, and then then it's an hour of work. So I could see how some of these techniques, even if they might be foreign or different, can plug right into like corporate culture. But I'm wondering if you've had any pushback or resistance for people, like you walk into a space and give them some ideas or advisement, and they are like, well, I have things the way I like it, or I'm used to this being the way that it is. How do you help people see some of these options or move from like the way they have it to the way that like you can envision?
Honestly, it was very challenging at first. I'm not gonna lie. I got lucky with some clients who were really surrendering to the process. They're like, you know what? I don't need this. You can, and these have the most amazing transformations because what makes the space beautifully decluttered is when you do the purging process correctly and you purge, then it's easy to organize and then you can see the transformation and really feel the liberation that comes from walking in like tidy space that doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. But I've had to deal with clients who are very resistant. I think my best way to go about it is just to be understanding. There is a reason why they accumulated the clutter in the first place, and they do have sentimental attachment to each item they hold, and there's a background behind this. So just to be understanding about it and not judgmental and provide them the space to really just remind them that they're hiring you because this is no longer working for them. This lifestyle of just accumulated clutter isn't making them happy and they need you. So if you're there and you're giving advice and they're not taking it, they're just resisting the process and they're resisting the change that they deep down really want. And it's just a matter of me reminding them of that. And most often than not, they'll resist a lot and they'll give excuses. of why they need this thing, because eventually if there's this war or this thing that happens, it will serve a purpose. However, they once you rationalize with them and you remind them, like I said, they tend to just be like, you know what, you're right, let's okay, I'm making peace with it. And sometimes it works and they end up being super happy with the transformation.
One of the things that you had listed for some information on your company, what you do is how a tidy space helps with productivity. So can you talk about the impact of how one causes the other?
Absolutely. To keep it very short and sweet for you, our brains are wired to be organized. We love organization, whether we're conscious of it or not. And the reason why is because on a subconscious level, when we are in a space, our brain is picking up on a lot of things, right? Our brain picks up on a lot of information. And that is why with the law of attraction, we're able to attract specific things because we can tell our minds, hey, I want you to focus on yellow stuff, and your eye will pick up on every yellow thing in the room. But the reason why it's picking up on every yellow thing in the room, it's because it's picking up on everything in the room in the first place, right? So the more items you have, the more your brain is scattered and focused on a lot of things, the less you're capable of fully focusing on what's in front of you. So the best thing to do to help yourself to be more productive is to reduce the visual noise around you so that your brain can actually focus on the one thing in its peripheral, which is the task at hand. That's one of the reasons why productivity is increased in a decluttered space.
When you talked about how the visual clutter tends to scatter your attention and your ability to focus, all I could think of is that I was like, oh, I wonder if that's where the term scatterbrain comes from, because your brain is literally scattered all over the
Yeah,
place.
absolutely.
So I wanted to also ask, because I think especially this year, everyone's been stuck at home and there's a lot of stress and anxiety. Well, you also mentioned that clutter can impact our stress levels. Because you can talk about the relationship between those two things.
Yes, absolutely. And I can also link it to health as well, and you'll see why in a few seconds. So the reason why I'm saying this is because there's multiple studies, and one of them indicates that when you are in a cluttered environment, your body just naturally tends to go into fight or flight mode. And obviously, what that does at a reflex is going to increase your cortisol levels and make you more stressed. There's another study that shows that women who are in a cluttered kitchen versus women who are in a tidy kitchen were more likely to eat junk food or cookie or sugary things, because the first thing you want to cope with when you have stress, because you're in a fight or flight mode without realizing, is something that's gonna reward you with a little happiness, which is going to be sugar or cookie or junk. And what that does is that it basically puts you more at risk of making less healthy decisions for yourself, which translates to weight gain. In conclusion. And I've actually experienced it myself. No matter how disciplined I am, I prep my meals, I'm extremely healthy. My fridge is all, like, I can show you guys real quick. My fridge is very, like, I have like preps, like everything is prepped in there. Why do I do that? Because I value this. I see the value behind it, and because I've experienced it. There's a time in my life where I was quarantining at my parents' house, and I stayed there for 14 days. And I love them to death, but they don't value organization or tidiness. And so there's a lot of items. And I didn't notice on a subconscious level, I was in fight or flight. And because there's chocolate and sweets and everything in that range, I would naturally cope with just eating those things. And I didn't know why. And then when I went back home and I had, my prep meals, and I was back to a tidy space, and I was back to having an organized environment, I went back to my healthy habits. And so even somebody like me who's conscious of, her eating choices and everything, I fell into the trap of, picking the cookie. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that, like you mentioned, the awareness is that people don't have that. So they don't necessarily know why they're doing some of these things. And it may be that it's literally the environment that you're in. Like you mentioned, you go to a different environment, you react in a different way.
Mhm.
So I know you mentioned that you were working with people one-on-one and now you're doing kind of group stuff, but how are people working with you remotely? Are you just having them do what you did and like show me around with the laptop? Like how does that work decluttering remotely?
Absolutely. So, one-on-one consultations were super easy. We would log into Zoom, and a little bit like what we just did right now, they would show me their space, and I would guide them virtually, vocally, by telling them, hey, I see this. All right, now you're going to place that item here. And now we're going to take this out. And the next step is we're going to organize this drawer. And step by step, we're able to do the entire office because with a camera, you can do anything.
Hi, Latasha. Welcome to the call. We're talking about getting organized. So I just want to double check because Marianna was just talking about helping people organize their offices remotely. So do you have people request like non-office stuff? Like, can you organize any part of somebody's house or life, or do you try to stay more with professional workspaces, offices, home offices, things like that?
Yes, I can, but I do prefer staying in offices. Um, Obviously, just because it is an area of expertise of mine, but also because it is less complex. I find that, for instance, organizing an entire kitchen virtually can be quite complex. It can be a little bit challenging, but when you're working in an office, you're working in a room. If you understand the system and how to make things more efficient for the person, it's just for me more of a comfort zone, but it is definitely doable.
So I see there's a question in the chat, and then I'm going to open it up to anyone else who's on the call. But I want to make sure I get to this. What if I feel like it takes too much time to organize and I don't have time for the important things? So it sounds kind of like the priority is, oh, I have all this stuff to do, so I need to spend my time doing that. What would you say to that?
I have the right answer for you. Basically, I actually had a client like that. She was this amazing businesswoman and she was busy and she had so many things on her plate. She's like, I don't have time. But at the same time, every time she walked into her office, she felt overwhelmed. She couldn't focus. Her brain was scattered. So, in order for her to feel better and feel more productive and create more time, the easy way for her to get started was to just put on the Pomodoro technique timer and get started one step at a time. And guess what? Now she sees that she does have time. She does have spare time. It's just because she was so overwhelmed and she was wasting time because of her clutter, she had to look for things twice as much. That's already time wasted, which is making your schedule that much more overwhelming. She was always late because she has to look for her shoes that she had one pair here and then the other one's over there. And it's just the second you're organized, you're actually saving time. So prioritizing that on your list will help you to save time and money and reduce stress and be more productive. There's so many benefits. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, and I think it's kind of like fitness or nutrition or anything. People say, "Oh, I don't have time to eat healthy," or "I don't have time to exercise," and like, there's such a kind of reimbursement. You put a little bit of time and effort in, and you get this huge kind of payback later. And so I think that that's a very valuable story to show because it's so true. We think, well, I don't have time to deal with this, but as you mentioned, like, oh, I can't find my keys, so I'm going to spend 10 or 15 minutes every day looking for something I can't find. If you had just taken 25 minutes at the beginning of the week, you would have saved hours of time. So yes, I think that's a great way to reframe that.
And you know what, as well, I would like to add to that. It's not just all these benefits, it's also a sense of control that you get, that you feel like you know where everything is. Your place works for you, not the other way around. Your home should work for you. You should have a flow in your home that feels natural. In your kitchen, for instance, you should have the things you need closest to you. Why would you have it hidden in the back cabinet to the left where you have to like squeeze yourself into a little thing to go get it when you can have it right next to you? It's just a matter of understanding the system and again, the technique behind organizing to just make your space easier.
Well, I know I said I'd let the people in the call ask a question, but this reminded me, I wanted to ask you earlier. So what connection do you have, if any, to some of these other techniques like feng shui and the harmony of a living space? Do you use any of that? Is that entirely different than kind of what you do?
I do apply it for sure in a space when I see it's needed. And I do that simply because I do value the transformation shock reaction. And I find that the most beautiful reaction I get is when I implement a little bit of feng shui and I just optimize the space in a way that energy flows more naturally. So absolutely, I do implement that in what I do. And again, it really all depends on the open-mindedness of my clients. Sometimes like already resisting the idea of moving these. So I might not have the space, but when I have a client that's like, oh my God, you have a white card, you can do anything you want, then I usually go for it.
So I see a question here in the chat. They're asking, is there ever such a thing as beautiful chaos? Why or why not?
It's a very good question. Thank you. I think when we're looking at an art piece, I would say yes. But when we're looking at a space, when there's no functionality, you won't enjoy. You won't enjoy it. Even if it looks like, even if let's just say there's a lot. Let's look at a closet, for instance, right? Now, imagine two different scenarios. The first one, it's colorful and there's a bunch of clothes and it's not coordinated accordingly, but like it's just colorful. And like some people can call that art, right? But how long does it take you to get ready in the morning? How long does it take you to find that one shirt that you're looking for when you have to sort through 40 shirts that you know don't fit it anymore, that you've never gonna wear, that you just kept over the years? It's just a matter of like understanding the functionality behind it and then finding beauty differently in a more efficient way. Like maybe you can have your space be extremely tidy and have that gorgeous art piece to have and look at. That's going to be aesthetic and that's going to bring you peace of mind. Because the truth is, the second you walk in your home, if you see chaos, you're lying to yourself if you're telling me that you feel great in it. No one feels great. People it feels heavy. When you walk into the same room, if it's decluttered and empty and you have a beautiful vase of flowers and it's just those little touches of art, you walk in and it just feels so spacious, you naturally feel great. So I guess that's my answer.
Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hi, I'm Shane Borza, your content creator coach. I have 2 books on filmmaking, Film Notes, where you learn to write, direct, and produce, and the Film Notes Workbook, where you can learn checklists and paperwork to streamline creating your content. Available at shaneborza.com. I also have filmmaker resources like the Paperwork Bundle with over 300 documents, the Sound Effects Bundle with almost 3,000 files, and the Music Bundle featuring 900 tracks of all genres. Want to build your professional credits? Become an associate producer and get listed on IMDb. Let me help you get your art out into the world.
Scene one, Apple, take one.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Solve Network. These interviews are from our web series of the same name. Want to watch? Head over to YouTube and search for the Solve Network. If you have questions, you can reach out to me at shaneborza.com. On behalf of my co-founder, Benjamin Goss, we're glad you are a part of the network and hope you are finding solutions. If you need solutions, please reach out.